Okay, make sure you're beautiful. Welcome to the Pontypridd Moot, and this week we have the lovely Justin Hughes. There he is, who's giving us a talk on the cunning tradition, isn't it? Yes. So,
magic, village witchcraft.
Hand over to you, my lovely.
Thank you. So, my name's Justin. I live just a couple of miles that way, walking distance. I would have been if I wasn't carrying this, because I would have been a tenant on Saturday. Thank you so much for having me here today, first and foremost. Lovely to meet you all. I come from a very loosely based family tradition of cunning craft. So many, back about 10, 20, even 30 or 40 years ago, there's a lot of store put on practitioners to have lineage, to validate their practice with history and things like this. I can't do any of that. There is a family tradition which I will come back to now, but what I want to start off with really is explain a little bit about cunning craft and village witchcraft, which is an inherited legacy for every single practitioner of magic and witchcraft that walks the earth today. Because this is where our skills ultimately derive from. Whether you're British, whether you're African, whether you're South American, Philippines, all across the world, every country that you can name will have its own indigenous practice of magic, and the practitioners that give that service to the community. And that is really what this talk is about today. So in terms of cunning, how would we define the term cunning?
Clever.
Thank you. Because normally, if you looked it up, it tends to be sly, deceitful, etc.
And all of them.
Yeah.
But it's very clever, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is because of the way that we manipulate and interpret language. There's a lot of propaganda, particularly against practitioners of magic. Look at the term witch, for example. Going back, that wasn't a positive term. It's still used as a negative, even to this day. But cunning, in my lexicon, is all about knowing. And ultimately, when we step out as practitioners of the craft into our community, whether it's friends or family or wider, people will recognise that you know more on a subject or about these very interesting, very secretive arts than they do. And there's nothing wrong with that. Because if you go to the GP will know more about their arts than you do, which is why you go there. And in a way, I suppose, witches such as myself are very much like the GPs in the magical community, because you're expected to know a fair bit about a lot of subjects, but we should never be so prideful in our practice that we don't know when to refer on to other people. So for example, if someone comes to me and needs a really in-depth reading, well, I'm okay at scrying, I quite like the runes, but it might be that I might ask my wife Jackie to do a tarot card reading, or refer on to Gemma, who does them every day as a professional practitioner, and there's nothing wrong with that. So, the terminology around the practice, in Wales we've got the Dyn Hysbys, the Cunning Man, we have the Wise Women, the Root Workers, the Conjurers, the Healers in France, the Sage Femme, the Sage Women, which I rather love. Madame Blanche is another one. A lot of the common terms that we might hear, even to this day, is the White Witch and the Black Witch. Instantly recognisable, but inherently racist, unfortunately, because it is still reaffirming the white-black kind of ethos. Where in actual fact, just from my own perspective, I don't find day any more evil to night. Light, dark, summer, winter, they're all flip sides of the same coin when we look at magical things. So the history. Has anyone researched witchcraft and the practice of the traditions and things like that?
A little bit.
Yeah? What have you found?
This is my perspective on it, and sure everybody got their own. I just believe witches inherently are healers.
Yes.
And I think that, when we were invaded by various people, they were afraid of our healing capabilities, And so they vilified us, they made us, they even renamed our plants, making them sound horrific. They introduced the devil, which we all know is the Green Man or whatever, you know, Cernot. And I think that they were afraid of us.
Yeah.
Why? I don't know. And so we became fearful and...
I think the reasons why are manifold. And it's all about the role of women, the change in spirituality, the influx of different cultures, patriarchy, monotheism, all of that.
Do you think ego went into there as well? People thinking they're superior?
It does, and that's something that we've got to be mindful of as well.
Yes.
Very mindful of. But we should always be confident in our abilities. You might not actually be confident in yourself, but you must be confident in your magic. Particularly when you're standing out there and saying, to people, do you know what? I can do X, Y, and Z. You have to be able to back that up. Because then there's another added responsibility that when you do stand up and say that you become the face of witchcraft for those people in your area. And therefore you're representing the wider craft community. And there is a level of responsibility with that, you know. Am I doing a good job? Am I setting a standard here? So, within these towns and communities, people like us have always existed as the healers, predominantly as the healers. Interestingly, they could have very mixed reputations. There are a number of records where the village witch or the wise woman was a renowned midwife, but at the same time people were afraid because she did have a reputation as well for being able to land the odd hex or malevolent charm on it. And really, our story goes back to sources of information which is very limited because the people who practice, just like we do every single day in the communities, wrote very little down. They might not be able to read or write at all, in fact. But they learned by doing, by word of mouth, from following someone else in that town. So most of the written records that we have to go on is just the same as every other thread of craft history, which is the witch trials. Because it's in those interviews where you get the nuggets of what these people actually did in the day-to-day communities.
Would there be an element why they might have been feared because of euthanasia, where they saw no hope for somebody, just as we're discussing it now, they would have...
Yes.
So that would have added to them.
Yeah, it would have.
The full context for why they might have done something.
We talk about hedge riders. Who'd do hedge rider? It's a term used usually within traditional witchcraft as a person that is able to access that liminal place of being, either via trance or herbs, which I'll come to shortly, and various magical practices where you journey into that liminal place, into the overworld or the underworld, to gather information or practice and bring that knowledge back. It can relate to physical places, so the edge of a town or village, you know, from this line here where we have our town to that line there where there's mountains and streams and wilderness. Here we have ordered civilization, here we have wild and tame nature, that liminal spot. But we have liminality in day-to-day life. Birth, death. The witch stands at each of those points. They were the midwives, and midwives bring people into the world as well as ush them out. The most fearsome plants within the craft, within, you know, when we look at henbane, belladonna, etc., these medicines, are still used to this day, particularly in end-of-life care, to bring ease, to soothe, to comfort at that end-of-life point.
Make it an easier parting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a very, very sacred thing. And it's
even used in the NHS. I'm pretty sure my mum had, just before she died, they were giving her some kind of belladonna.
So what we tend to use there is things like diamorphine, which would have taken over from the poppy derivatives. Belladonna's got atropine in it, which is used in lots and lots of different places, and these are belladonna berries. This is a homebrew side. I'm going to jump ahead, we'll work my way back. But in here, this is actually infused with a portion of henbane seed. So there's very active constituents and principles in you which absolutely are actually used in healthcare to this day. And we're both nurses. You know, and that is very much a part of our everyday craft.
That's just a nice context to know you're both nurses. That's lovely.
It is great.
This is what we do. So, you know, professionally, we don't go in, don't breathe, you know. And lighting our candles, but day to day, skin on skin, helping people, soothing them, helping them feel better, or just being there to hold their hand at the end, is such a privilege to be able to deliver this.
I work in it with them, so I'm quite aware of
Yeah,
a lot of spirituality going on.
absolutely, absolutely. It's the one of the founding bedrock cornerstones, I think, of witchcraft. You don't often hear these days because we have a health service, but the people I'll talk about shortly, they were the health service back in the day. There was no one else. So to come back a little bit before I jump ahead onto this stuff, as there's little written evidence, pretty much because most of the people didn't write anything down. Before St Fagans was revamped and they remodelled the museum part, there was a section on Welsh folk magic history, and it was a rather delightful little book that was kept by a Welsh Cunning Man with his diagrams, his writing, things like this. Natural based elements, talismans, amulets. But what we lack in historical continuity, we make up for in prevalence. In 1896, Old Burton, in the Anatomy of Melancholy, Laments, says that sorcerers are too common. Cunning men, wizards, and white witches, they call them in every village, and this is absolutely true. In Wales, we preserved this tradition a lot longer than many other areas because we were so bloody inaccessible. The mountains and the valleys kept us safe. We even saw off the Romans once or twice, fairly locally. And in each of these towns, there would have been a village practitioner, someone who knew, who could deliver babies, even brew remedies for the farm animals and the sheep and things like that, which is a little bit of what I learned from my grandfather. We also had the Brythonic language, the Welsh language, so when the missionaries would come across the borders, they'd come to the village pubs where people and the taverns where people would gather, and they'd stand there and they'd give their rolling spiel and preach the Bible, and everyone would have their beer and they'd nod along and smile. Being utterly ignorant of what was being said, no bloody clue. Because they're listening to Latin, they all spoke Welsh. And all these things helped us to retain a lot of our lore and spirituality a lot longer, I think, even into the modern age. So when we talk about the witchcraft trials, there were 42 indictments in Wales between the 16th and the 17th centuries, 5 executions, and 2 of those, I'll mention them all for posterity and out of respect, but it's the first and the second which are important to us today. The first was Gwenfwyr Ellis in 1594. She was executed at 42, bless her. She was a cloth spinner, but more than that, and as well as, she was a very proud herbalist. She was out there, she was a healer, she was a known charmer, and she was very proud of these skills. Everyone knew you'd go and see Gwen if there was something wrong. She would make salves, drinks, and plasters, but she was accused by the local gentry because someone found a written charm in their property and all eyes fell on Gwen. The chances are it may well have been planted, or the person who'd requested the charm was embarrassed that they'd been found with it and pointed the finger elsewhere, and it really didn't take much more than that to get you into a life-threatening danger really back in the day. Wales had relatively few, I mean we're talking 5 executions. If you look at England, Scotland, the continent, you are going up by orders of magnitude. And of course with the greater numbers, it's fairly safe to say that the greater proportions of people probably never did anything along these lines in life. It was just the fact that they were different, that they angered the wrong person, etc. Because humans aren't very nice sometimes. But Gwenfwyr Ellis, bless her, was the first person in Wales to be executed. Not the first indicted. There were many people indicted for witchcraft, and some of the stories, if you read amongst them, what these people were doing in the communities was extraordinary. One was very much like Snow White, where they actually were accused of enchanting an apple so that the farmer's maiden daughter would eat the apple and then was whisked out of the village by her would-be suitor, who took her away, bless her soul, and raped her. Remarkable. Remarkable. And again, it just underpins the way the women have been treated through history, unfortunately. The people in between, in 1622, Lowry, Agnes and Ridder, Firth, Evan, were siblings, and they were indicted and executed because of the accusation again of Maleficia, where a lady and her daughter the lady died. The daughter lost power of speech, language control, and problems with her limbs, all in fact symptoms of a stroke when you look at it, with haunting similarities to how the Pendle and Lancashire witch trial started, because that was all very, very similar events. And then in 1655, Margaret of Richard, she was accused in Beaumaris. She again was a very proud charmer, but one of the parishioners died, as people are wont to do back in 1655, when to live to be in your 40s was a good age. And again, she roused the suspicion of the locals and they pointed the finger at her. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword, this lark. When you know this stuff and you want to help people and you can make life better or a little bit more comfortable, you're putting yourself in inherent danger as well. Because you're stepping out there and it doesn't take much for people to accuse. Now we're in a very different place these days, but even so, and Catherine will tell you, I've been practicing my craft like this for decades within my local community. But if you saw me out on the street or in work, I wouldn't mention any of this. There's still that kind of self-preservation, I suppose it is, that goes with it. That note of caution. And there's nothing wrong with that, because I mean, in my living memory, when I was in school, a teacher found out that I was practicing this kind of thing, and he openly preached his classes that I worship the devil. And friends, acquaintances of mine who fit up the valleys, about 20 odd years ago, they had the windows put through. So you've always got those small-minded, those narrow-minded, all those bigots, unfortunately, that go alongside. But usually, and happily, they are very few and far between.
Do you think popular culture's helped that? Like, in recent years, you've had numerous TV series and dramas that have kind of tried to bring back the balance.
Absolutely, absolutely. I've used a couple of them when I went in my teen years. So I was a teen in the 90s, and when I was coming out as a witch, I was able, 1996 version of The Craft, Fraser Bulk, Robin Tunney, I was able to use Robin as an example. So I said, well, I'm rather like Robin, obviously sans red hair, but I was born with these abilities that steadily grew as I grew older, and then went from there. So how does all this history, how do these individuals up and down the country, across the world, link into me? I come from a very similar background. My great-great-grandmother was Mrs. Jenkins of Trehavard, just stone's throw that way. And she was a midwife and a healer. She brewed tonics, she provided basic healthcare, even down to small operations, incisions of boils, etc. And I inherited a few of the recipes via my grandfather. She was known in her village. She'd brew small beers and ales and sell them for a few pennies in a spare bath that she kept in the shed, by all accounts, when she wasn't using it. And she was a midwife, but she was a midwife in the true sense, where she would lay out the dead as well. So she'd be there with the expectant mums, with birthing, and she'd be there at the end as well to lay out the dead. And she kept a silver tin chest. One of my favourite stories about her was that in this chest where she kept her cloths and her shrouds, that when the children were staying over at night, because remember now there's no electricity, they probably didn't, she didn't have a gas light, oil lamps to begin with, they were candles and tallow. The children at night would listen in the dead of night for the creak of Granny Jenkins's box opening up, because that would foretell a death in the village. It slammed shut then. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. It's a delightful little story. Perfect for a dark winter's night. You can imagine the children scaring themselves in. Now, whether this woman actually practiced any form of witchcraft, as in magic, I have no idea. And if I'd actually called her a witch, she probably would have given me a thick ear, truth be told. But this is kind of where my story starts, because when I was born, I showed signs very early on of an inherent sense of intuition, which, as I grew older, manifested as quite a mystic awareness of the local environment. I'm sure many of you will identify with being able to feel the vibes of certain places, people, having that inner intuition, that gut sense, which started to peak as puberty started, but I raised eyebrows even without people outside of the family knowing about stuff like this, because I was a little boy, 6 or 7, and they'd friends of the family would come up and say, "Oh, Justin, what are you going to be when you grow up then?" Thinking doctor, policeman, fireman. I'm going to be a witch. Wasn't really the standard answer we were looking for. But it was just something that I always knew, that's what I was going to be. I had a fascination with certain signs and symbols, the pentagram being one of them. I drew the bloody things everywhere. Spirals, the colour green. All these things later, as I started to research and read, started to make sense as little signposts along the way and become part of my own personal practice and correspondences. But it wasn't until I was about 12 or 13 where things really went a bit nuts, where my intuition went from gut sense to full-blown clairvoyance with such frequency that I couldn't tell if I was seeing things before they happened with a kind of precognizance, or I was making them happen, and it really scared me, it really shook me up. And then my grandfather pulled me to one side one night around about Christmas time. I'd become very withdrawn, very quiet. Spent a lot of time by myself because I generally thought I was going mad. And he pulled me to one side and he said, "It's from me you get it." I said, "What?" He said, "My granny was a witch and you've got it too." And it's a ridiculous statement to hear out loud, but by God it gave me such relief because I thought, I'm not mad. I'm sane. And then he started to explain the background and the history and the story, and then a lot of the stuff that he'd done started to make more sense because he took me for walks around the mountains, around the valleys, around the countryside. He would teach me about the herbs, the plants, the animals, the sacred springs which we would go to drink water from to either make wishes or make themselves well. And during one walk, he was never a formal spellcaster, but he had an innate and natural magic. And during one walk through the woods, he stopped and he said, "Listen, can you do that bird call?" So I stopped and listened here. And he did this, and he whistled, and this green finch came out of the trees and landed on his hand. Just like that. Remarkable. One of my best ever memories. How he did it, I will never know.
Can I just say, I love hearing stories about how a grandparent is absolutely critical to their grandchild, because I
I tell you, he was a linchpin.
Yes, so when you hear about that vital role that they played in your life,
he was a linchpin.
it's incredible.
Both my parents were working full time, so as they do, the grandparents step in.
Yeah.
And I've seen the same thing with my parents, so with my children. It's almost like you leapfrog, really, because you get to be the parents with your grandchildren that the society doesn't really give you the chance to be when your kids are growing up, because you're so damn busy all the time. But he really was a linchpin for me. So, coming out as a witch then in school, I got to be into the 6th form, and I started to open up about things like this. At the time I was asked to go to Germany with the school music department. I didn't play an instrument, but someone dropped out. And I needed someone to carry boxes of music, but I can do that, all my mates were in the band, so off I went. So I found myself one night out on a small patch Pontypridd Bar area in Rhineland. The teachers were in the bar, and one of my friends came up and said, "Oh, you can do readings and things. They want to have a chat." I said, "Oh, here we go." And bear in mind, I was 17 and a half, 18. I think I had about 2 pints, and the beer over there is remarkable. I highly recommend it. So, in I shuffle, and the teachers sat around the table, half the size of this actually, is a handful of faculty there. And I said, "What's this we heard about you?" And I said, "Well, I can do bits and pieces." They go, "Can you do something?" I said, "Can you read this?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "But I had taken my tarot cards, it was because I was doing tarot for my friends." I said, "But obviously I don't bring them out on a night out with me, but I can read palms." So I said, "Well, have a look at ours then." So around I went, and I said to the bus driver, "You've been married twice, you've got X number of children, blah, blah, blah." The Welsh teacher was there with his wife who was at school, and I said, "You're an incorrigible flirt." She's looking at him and going, "Yeah, no. And round we went until I come to the last lady, who was the head of the music department, Catherine, and I looked at her palm, and I said, "Oh," I said, "your fate line is coming and bisecting straight through your lifeline. This is a really important time for you. The innate sense that this is very close. This is a very important time. It's going to be one of the milestones of your life, but I don't want you to worry. I don't want you to be concerned, and you need to be really positive. Be focused, stay strong, you're going to be fine." That was the impression, that was the message. And I picked up my glass and I went, that was it, job done. Now I was sharing a room with her son and a shared friend at the time. Both of whom were deeply Christian at the time. It was a little bit dicey on times, but we all got on great because we were thinking individuals and we could all chat about our differences, which was fabulous. But that night he was very, very upset, and obviously they both knew what was going on. I didn't push, I wasn't going to inject myself with that confidence that we weren't ready to talk. But I left them to it. But the following day, he almost had me by the scruff when he said, "Who told you?" I said, "What? Who told you?" I said, "I don't know what you're talking about, Roshan." His mum, when we went back, 4 days later, was going in for a radical mastectomy for breast cancer. And that message had such an impact on her that she never ever forgot it. Now, it wasn't as if I was saying, "You're going in for a radical mastectomy." But the message I was able to give, as simple as basic as it was, give her the strength to know that she was going to be absolutely fine. That she was going to survive, and she was going to push her way through and make a full recovery, which she did. And I saw her about 20 years later walking through this town, actually. And as she walked through, she looked at me, she gave me a blazing smile, looked at her hands and put them behind her back. And this is where I go back to that responsibility really of offering our craft to the community. And these tools in front of me here are many of the ways that we can do it. So we have our herbs. Catherine, how am I doing for time? We're okay. Because I can withdraw all day. Don't stop me. The herbs you see here are freely available. They would have been grown or wildcrafted. I prefer to grow and wildcraft a lot of mine. I like to develop a working relationship with the herbs that I'm gathering. It's very much a two-way process going on. So to use some of the examples here, we've got peppermint, we've got the yarrow, we've got elderflower. If ever you can get your hands on those three herbs, particularly for your winter time, as a cold remedy, very, very good. Really helps to knock out a lot of the symptoms of the cold before it can start, if you start to sip it quickly. It can be made into a tincture such as this, which is an alcoholic extract, and whereas you might need to take a teaspoon of these mixed herbs per cup several times a day, you only need about a teaspoon of this to do the same thing. Although I must admit, I find the tea as a hot decoction much more effective, even though my poor wife will tell me it doesn't taste so good. Rose hips, again, in vitamin C, everyone knows in oranges, but massive store of vitamin C in rose hips. Really, really good, and a very good inclusion for any syrup or cold remedy that we can offer and use.
How do you cook with the hairs and the rose hips? Because that's always put me off this. Because they're irritant.
You sieve right out.
You serve them.
Yeah, just pour it through a muslin cloth. It
Oh, okay.
sieves right out.
Okay.
And it tastes delicious too. It's really good on ice cream and desserts. So from this side of the table, where these herbs you can drink and eat to your heart's content, we go to this side, the banefuls. I use the term baneful because it's a common term, but actually it's just all in the dosage and the preparation. These things have no sympathy for the ham-fisted or the incautious. They are poisons, but anything is a poison in great enough quantity. So in small quantities, what can they do? They facilitate trance, they facilitate your magic to help you to relax, to access states under ritual conditions that you might have difficulty doing otherwise. These are never used as a quick fix to get high. There's a good chance if you go along that route you won't come back. And you become a permanent resident in the underworld rather than just passing through. The use of hallucinogenics, psychotropics, is very well documented and absolutely authentic to the craft. But I have no patience for people who just get high within a circle for the fun of it, because that to me is very disrespectful for what these things do. Nothing against recreational use of drugs, nothing at all as a recreation. But within magic, within circle, within ritual, there has to be a dignity and a reverence that goes with it, and a discipline to use these properly, because otherwise you will just be rolled by the herbal ally that you're trying to use and get nothing from it. If anything, you'll just wake up with a bloody blinding headache afterwards, and there's no fun to that either. So I've already described the belladonna here, harvested from my garden and tagged. My children had a very interesting upbringing. They knew the football land in certain places they were not to venture forth. But they are very well, they heat up quite well, and I'm quite proud to say they know the difference between mugwort now and the both Spain that grows, which is always useful. These ones are the ointments. Now ointments can be used and prepared with the healing herbs. I'll be teaching them shortly, coming up now in a couple of months' time, as wound healing salves for cuts, scrapes, bites and stings, for example. The term plaster comes from the term plaister, which is where you use such an ointment like this on a piece of gauze, pop it on your arm and then bandage it in place to act as a wound healing or a topical treatment for things like rheumatism, aching joints, limbs, bruises, etc. The old vinegar from paper, nursery rhyme, was a classic example, particularly in combination with sage. Really good to bring up bruises and help to heal. But these ones here are the more typical witches' ointments. Have you heard of that? Yeah? So a lot of the medieval witch trials talk about the witch's ointment, the Unguentum Sabbati, the flying salve. What these do, because the herbs are so potent, they're absorbed into the body transdermally, so it gives a measured dose over time. If you took the contents of this as an oral preparation, such as a tea, a decoction or a tincture, it would kill you. But in these quantities, through the skin, it's very much more safer, and it produces that twilight sleep to enable you to project mentally, astrally, yourself either into different realms or to far remote view, etc., things like that. One of the interesting things about these is that under UV light you can see the constituents. So, for example, the alkaloids in here, under UV, fluoresce pink.
Yeah.
See?
Yeah.
So you can see, now this is a plantain salve, that would have no effect at all. It might, if you used petroleum jelly as a base, which is a very quick and easy way, because it does fluoresce a kind of green-blue colour with UV light. But your typical alkaloid preparations will fluoresce a very bright pink or dusky red. As I mentioned, this one here is a cider, which is brewed with henbane. I use this for particularly the winter type salads, and for any working way you want to bring out the more theriomorphic, shape-shifting, animal, you know, you wield masks and you aspect. Do you know about aspecting? Where you get an animal mask for a totem, it could be a fox, a wolf, a crow, things like this. For those type of rituals where it's a heavy drum beat, foot stomping, this is very, very good. And then we come to the magic. So I talked about the healing, and I talked about the potions. What about the magic? How do you feel talking about spells? Do you feel confident talking about spells? Do you practice spellcraft?
A little bit.
Yeah?
I have done them there.
It can seem strange, even in today's society, even amongst ourselves, to talk about magic and say, do you know what? The words, I believe in magic. I don't believe in magic at all. I experience magic. Magic is something that you know. It can happen when you want it to, it can happen when you don't want it to. Sometimes magic is the last thing you want to attempt on a situation or scenario. Because it follows the path of least resistance, and if you haven't done everything that you can do physically within your power to manifest something, say you're avoiding something. Something might actually be painful for you to grasp or to acknowledge within yourself, and you cast a spell, guess what's going to happen next? You will be dragged to the mirror of your soul, and you will be forced to confront that aspect of yourself. And that's why sometimes when you read in magazines and things like this, or forums, I cast a spell and everything went tits up. Well, yeah, this is why.
My favourite's the Moldavite. I bought Moldavite and now my life's gone to shit. No, it hasn't. Your life is already shit.
Magic is very much, you know, your tarot cards? The Tower. You look at the Tower card. The Tower is nothing more than a representation of that lightning bolt coming down. You're going to bring this massive force of energy into your life. And it will obliterate what doesn't need to be there, so you can build it back up. That's an extreme example. Sometimes, you know, it could just be taking away the pain of a scratch or healing someone's sprain. You know, there's many a person out there that might never felt the prick of that injection that they've just had. But one of the ways that we can use magic is to empower all of these things for a start. So even if you're just making a cup of tea for someone, and you can see they're anxious, would you like to pop a calming spell on that cuppa? It works. It really does work. But the way you do it, and the way that I do it, is you have to put yourself in that place of calmness first. Build up that sense of calm, that sense of relaxation, and then project that energy into the cup. And then give it to that person and see what happens. It's the simplest magic in the world. It doesn't have to be complicated. There's lots of tools that we can use. So one of them is we've got our herbs that we can brew into teas, oils, such as these. So this is an oil that I brewed for love workings and talismans. You can pass that around and have a sniff if you like. This is one that I made for prosperity. Again, this one that way, have a little sniff.
I could do with that.
Pinch of dab if you wish, I've got no objection.
On your palms, so it can come
We
to you.
have wax discs, beeswax, any kind of wax is so useful to the witch as candles, focuses.
Isn't it lovely?
But these can be used to inscribe as talismans. You can put a pentacle on there.
It smells.
Back in the day, this might have been very useful because anything like this, if you're under suspicion, anything carved in wax, just throw in the fire and it's gone.
That smells lovely.
But
So it'd be good for sigils.
Yes.
extremely good for sigils. Extremely good. This, plus an oil, gives you your ointment and your salve. So versatile. And that's why I make them, I cast them like this for that reason, for sigils.
Do you put any other oil in them to make them, because beeswax can go quite hard, can't it? Do you put an oil or something else that would make it a little bit more pliable, a little bit more?
Now, yeah, so if I was going to use, if I was going to make a poppet,
Yeah.
for example, the classic doll, we've all seen them, I would tend to favour paraffin wax because it's more malleable for that reason. Beeswax, if ever you've tried to shape and mould it, is very hard, and it's got almost a flaky texture.
Yeah.
It doesn't quite bind. So I would add a tablespoonful of an oil,
Yeah.
such as the ones that are passed around now, in keeping with the nature of the magic cleanse I'm going to be doing.
And what is that oil?
So it-
Olive oil or?
Get rid of
Whatever
that.
you
Put it on your
Yeah.
car. I've just
Whatever
done a
you
grape
have.
seed
Vegetable
one.
oil,
Yeah.
anything that stays.
Yeah, I very much use what is in the cupboard.
Yeah.
I might put a picture of your labels.
Please do
Is that
credit
okay?
to my wife. She got much better
Oh,
writing than me.
they are so beautiful.
Oh,
Sorry, disrupting all these things.
Not at all.
I'm so interested.
You smelt it,
Yeah.
No,
Orange juice.
it's heat producing one.
Now, you are all adults. You are all consenting. So some of these you can taste if you wish.
Stop to drive after.
A couple of drops isn't going to harm. A couple of sips is fine.
that's
What's
that? The
I can smell
prosperity.
this from you.
Yeah, and I've got a glass of beer as well.
Yes.
It is, yeah, and it smells really nice.
It's really nice.
Retracting all the money now.
I bought a tenner.
That is nice. I like the love.
Oh, there is, sorry.
I like the love
Is it
one.
working yet?
Good smell.
So this one is a liqueur made with Damiana as well as other herbs and spices. Damiana is an incredible herb used typically as an aphrodisiac. The reason that it does this is because what it does, it creates an excess of energy, psychosexual energy within the body and the auric fields. And one of the ways the body tries to birth energy is via sex. But as an adjunct before a big spell, before Sabbath, before your Esbat, as a tea, as a tincture, in the run-up towards that, will infuse you with a great deal more energy than what you would normally carry into circle. And that's always an added advantage. So you can pass this one around, have a sniff. It's got a pipette. You can have a couple of drops in your tongue if you wish. I'll leave that up to you. Again, consenting adults.
That's Damiano,
Yes.
just pure Damiano.
No.
Oh,
There's other herbs and spices in there as well.
That's not the wife's away.
I have come across it. I think I saw in a health shop that it's like an adaptogen, like ginseng.
Yes, but as my favourite adaptogen, put my teeth in, is Amanita, the muscaria, as a tincture.
Reminds me a little bit of lactose.
It's got a brandy
Bit
base.
of a
Yeah, there's a brandy base to it.
brand. I'm going to be very talkative now.
It boosts your aura, helps to cleanse. And it's just a really good all-rounder to have in your cupboard. When you need a boost, when you need a bit of a lift to your energy, one teaspoon in a cup is a really good uplift. Both physically and obviously sexually, and there's no harm in that. Anyone brave enough to try the henbane cider?
I would, but I don't know if it would go with my medicines. So
Fine.
I'm just erring on the side of caution.
That's absolutely fine.
Oh my goodness.
Whee!
Right.
We like it.
You can pass around have a sniff if you want to drink it.
What was this one? What effect?
So this one is all about your Sabbats.
Right.
When you want to.
Because it's a form of yesterday, wasn't it?
Exactly.
So it
Oh,
Yeah.
That's really
So
nice.
you're good foot stomping in to raise that power.
It gives that intensity.
Yeah, yeah. Brings out the beast, the animal nature.
Combined with the Damiano and a tincture.
Yeah, possibly bacchic.
Okay, it's not done with that.
I'm too busy enjoying them. You can just stand
So there's lots of ways that we can use these things, as you can see. One of the traditional roles that we have, as well as healthcare, is protecting people as well from the more malevolent side of the craft. I actually lost touch with a friend about several years ago now, for a while, because while she could accept that I'm a fairly decent guy, we got on really well, if I can do magic, that must mean that there's other people out there and they can do magic, and they might not be nice.
Yeah, so how do you screen?
Well, one of the easiest ways to do it, you can make protective pouches and talismans, you can ward your house and your property, you can cast protective spells yourself. The only way to protect yourself against magic is to use magic, unfortunately. And one of the ways that we can do it is to use things like this. So you can get yourself a pair of nails, and with some red thread, tie them into equal arm crosses, like that. Secrete them around your home, hang them in your windows, by your front door. Even if you've got cavities in your property, you can tuck them into your cavities. Blessed, consecrated, empowered, of course. And even to this day, when renovations are happening to old properties, they'll often find odd bits and pieces tucked
Which
into
is
them.
Very old
bottles.
house. We're not too into wine. Well, you've
Yeah.
been in my house, Carly, and and we found all sorts when we knocked that spiral staircase about. We've
Fabulous.
found all sorts. I've got a little box of
Absolutely
little
fabulous. Yeah.
bits of,
Yeah.
I don't know what they are.
That's why
but
you're
it
drawn
was
to
like-
the house next time. You knew, yeah.
And some of those things may well have just
Little
been
bits of leather, I
odds
have
and
no
sods,
idea.
but some of them are probably there as what we call apotropaic
Yeah.
charms to ward
Yeah.
evil, to
Yeah.
prevent the entry of
And
witches.
like a lot of like nails, I suppose,
Yeah.
just really old.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
pots broken, little bits of broken pottery that looked like they'd been broken on purpose. I don't know what that was.
So sharp items, being
Yeah.
pottery, glass, nails, are often contained within those charms because that's the energy you want to give off. You want to make your boundary antagonistic to something or someone that's going to do you
Yeah.
Oh,
harm.
That
and
makes
a coin, really old coin
Mm.
as well.
Yeah.
So it was like little.
Again, it wouldn't be a great leap to think that you're actually paying the spirits of your house and place
Yeah,
Yeah.
a tithe.
yeah.
Look after me. I'm laying this as an offering to you. Please look after my house and home. You know.
I still got a naughty house elf, so if I'm having a drink, sometimes if I've like tripped over something in the house, if I have a drink, I always do one for my little mate. I always, if I have a glass of wine and I'm on my own, I'll put like one there, so
And I love
you're
that.
not an alcoholic on your own then. You're ready to self drinking with
Yeah.
you.
And I love that. And there's a lot to be said for giving gifts, giving back, communicating.
Yeah.
Even like that, which might be in jest and a bit of fun, but actually that's quite meaningful as well. Have that space in your home to commune that keeps that sacred energy to it. Usually, typically, is the hearth. You know, we've all seen the witch with a cauldron. The reason they were next to the cauldron by the hearth was that's where they did everything.
Yeah.
Everyone did everything there. You didn't have any other cooking pots, you had your cauldron. And the mythology that built up around that, to go back to the wise women, was you warm the water to wash the babe and you carry the water to bathe the corpse,
Yeah.
in and out. You know? The broomstick again, very liminal, very kind of phallic. We use a broomstick in our circles. Who practices formal witchcraft? Quick at you, casting circles, etc. You cast a door, 9 times out of 10, best one in the world, you're in the circle, you just put something, I've left the bloody lighter in the kitchen. Happens to us all, I think, excuse me, and you cut your doorway to step out. Well, one of the ways that we do it, we slide the broomstick through
Oh,
and step over the broom in and out.
oh, so you put it that way or that
Yeah,
way?
doesn't matter, I usually,
No.
because it's a circle, I usually go like that. So you cross over the intersection between the brush and the shaft.
Okay.
So the brush's on the inside, the shaft's on the
That's
outside.
what was my next question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're pointing it really.
Yes. And then
For
you
the
step
exit,
over.
this
You
is
step
your
over.
exit.
Yeah, and you step over that intersection.
Yeah.
And that works without damaging the infrastructure of the circle. Worth a try. Have a go. See what you think. What else?
So could you try a little bit of that?
By all means, sir. Of course you can.
Have Fizz away.
So yeah, there's lots of different ways that we use magic in and around the house, like this. That really, at the bottom line, what separates the cunning man, the wise woman, from any other witch is just that you have people to your home, or you go to them, to provide that service, fundamentally. And I think that for me is the cornerstone of my craft, is that the reason that my great-great-grandmother did what she did, my grandfather did what he did, and what I do, is to basically look after people to the best of our abilities. To maybe, in some small way or not, be able to give something back and make life a bit easier, because God knows it's not enough. And that might be with a herbal tea, it might be with a reading, it could be with a charm or a spell, it might just be a cuppa and a sensible chat, a shoulder, you know? And we've all got them. There's always someone in your life where you have the same conversation time and time again, and nothing changes. They don't need intervention, they just need someone to listen. You know, and when somebody's done a reading where Three of Swords have come up in your tarot reading, oh God, you go again. But I think just being there for people is really what the craft for me is about. And being able to share this today and get you to, you know, sniff herbs and taste potions and things is fantastic. And I really hope you've enjoyed, and I really hope it's given you something to think about. And I think, yeah, that's me done.